podcast where we put you on the map. This is Ron Costa broadcasting live in the Mappable USA studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. And folks, crowdfunding is big. Regulation A is big. A lot of people are trying to think of ways to market. And we're going to get into that today in a very unique manner. But before we start, let's introduce Vicky Hutchmala from the World Token Market. Vicky, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous again, Ron, and again, a perfect day in Vegas. We're blessed, and we have one of our favorite guests on today, and we're going to talk about how you can use Reg A for your company in a very unique way. So I think we should get started.
Okay, all right, that sounds great. So, folks, we have Darren Marble. Darren is the executive producer of Going Public. He's also the co-founder of Crush Capital. He's been on the show many times already. Let's welcome him back. Darren, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Vicky, it's a pleasure to be back on, Ron. Thank you. And, man, I miss you guys. I got to actually meet you in person for the first time after years in Vegas, maybe 2 weeks back, and had a blast at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center. So thank you both for dropping by. We were long overdue for a face-to-face meeting. And we were just talking before this podcast, we learned that Vicky has never played craps, and we said she will play this Wednesday at the Cosmo, 11 p.m., far table on the right. See you there, Vicky.
Well, Darren, I'm hoping that it was worth the wait to meet Ron and I in person.
Absolutely. No, you two are great, and I really appreciate everything you both do for this industry and shining a light on equity crowdfunding and Reg A+, and honored to be back on.
And you know what, Darren? Details matter in crowdfunding, and anyone who's listening right now knows you're a detail-oriented person because you just explained the exact crap table, location, and time. Most people just say,
there can be no uncertainty. There can be no uncertainty where we are playing craps on Wednesday.
Yeah,
and
then
it'll
one
be
other thing about
who actually shows up.
Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you what. Like you mentioned, we met you over at the Mandalay Bay, and people who are not familiar with Las Vegas, you don't need a gym when you live in Vegas and go to a trade show because you're just walking that floor. I wonder how many miles you actually walk on a daily basis at these shows. It's crazy, right?
Yes. Yes,
that was a big one.
About 20,000 steps is the answer.
Yeah. Wow.
That's
so
true,
again, let's talk about what you actually. You know what, Darren? It's very hard to believe, but maybe some people haven't listened to our previous episodes with you. Can you really go over, who you are, your background, really quickly before we get started?
Absolutely. So I'm a serial entrepreneur based in Los Angeles, and I've been active in the equity crowdfunding industry since day one. Specifically, I focus almost exclusively on the Reg A+ securities registration exemption. This is a capital raising tool that's been in effect for 6 years. It allows a privately held or publicly reporting company to raise up to $75 million, gives them the ability to generally solicit or market their deal, and anyone over the age of 18 globally can legally invest. I started off in 2015 with a company called Crowdfunding, which was a crowdfunding agency that pioneered direct-to-investor marketing of Reg A+ financings. Then in 2018, I co-founded and am still the CEO of Issuance, which is the leading technology platform for Reg A+ offerings. And I'm also an executive producer of Going Public, which is a new original series where we follow the stories of founders on their capital raising journey. And for the first time ever, viewers of this show can click to invest and buy shares in featured companies while they watch. Season 1 of Going Public is streaming now. It's streaming on entrepreneur.com as well as our own site, goingpublic.com. It's a 10-episode season. We're releasing episodes every Tuesday. And earlier this week, we released episode 4 of season 1 of Going Public, and we're just thrilled to finally be in this moment where the season and the show is out.
So how does Going Public work with Reg A and crowdfunding? How did you connect them?
in order for a viewer of this show to be able to invest in a company while they watch, the companies in the series all have to use the Reg A Plus capital raising tool to run their offerings. So there's 4 companies in season 1, and they range from a $30 million luxury woman's leather handbag company to an audio streaming company with 5 million monthly active users. All of these companies have filed an offering circular with the SEC, and they have subsequently received qualification from the SEC. Therefore, they have an active Reg A, they have an active campaign, and we've been producing their stories for 6 months in Miami, New York, Mexico, you name it, we've been there. And now we've cut these episodes up and found the most interesting parts of those stories as these founders are on their journey. And as a viewer, whether you're watching episode 1 or episode 8, at the beginning, middle, of end, if you like a deal, you can click to invest, and you're buying securities in these companies through an associated investment platform. So it's real time. The companies are all SEC qualified, and that's kind of the foundation for this show. And by the way, I think that's probably a big reason for why this show never existed before. You know, we went out on this journey 4.5 years ago to launch this series, and it was an incredibly complicated process to get here. And yet I had heard ideas for a show like this for years. You know, it's like Shark Tank, but the viewer can invest. I'd heard it from guys on Wall Street. I'd heard it from people in Hollywood. But what both of these groups were missing was the domain expertise in equity crowdfunding. And that's what we had and I had in spades, because we were, you know, involved in the industry very early. We ran some of the earliest and largest campaigns in the history of the industry. So we knew exactly how online capital raising works. We knew what the audit requirements were, the legal requirements. We understood the technology. We understood the user experience, what it's like for an investor to buy shares in a company online and how to make it as seamless as possible. And so that was kind of the missing piece, I think, and why a lot of other people that had this idea, and believe me, there are hundreds, if not thousands, I still meet people who say, I had that idea, you know, you took my idea, I had this idea 8 years ago, 5 years ago. But it was really this Reg A plus domain expertise in the middle that was really the foundation for the show to exist at all.
Well, and that gives the investors who are investing during the episode, gives them a sense of security and confidence in what they're investing in is a real thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, you know, listen, like here's the pros and cons, you know, to a Reg A from an investor standpoint. You know, a lot of issuers will tout SEC qualification, and sometimes they'll even misuse that qualification or even mislead investors. And they'll say, hey, we're SEC qualified, as if that means they have a good investment. And of course, that's not true. That's not true at all. However, in order to run a Reg A financing, a company has to submit 2 years of audited financials. They have to file a very detailed Form 1A offering circular, which includes a business description, a risk factors section, exhibits, executive compensation, as anyone is selling shareholder. So there's a pretty massive amount of disclosure that's included. But of course, just because the SEC qualifies that offering doesn't mean it's an easy way or guaranteed way to make money. There's no such thing. But at a minimum, a viewer watching this show has the ability to go into the offering circular and read all of this information. And so that's the beauty of the United States and the SEC and regulated capital markets, is that there are some important investor protections here, and that, you know, retail investors, everyday Americans, anyone around the world can go into these documents and learn about the facts of the business as part of their due diligence before they make an investment decision. And that's what I've always appreciated about operating at the center of a highly regulated industry. It's, you know, in some ways it's kind of the opposite of crypto or NFTs, and there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and lemon markets, and, you know, the sponsors have all the information and then the investor has no information. That's a horrible way to operate a market. And what happens is investors lose their shirts. when they don't have access to basic due diligence information. So at a minimum, that information is here. And then with the show, now the viewer gets to follow the founder. You really get to see who these people are and how they perform and how they deal with rejection, how they handle and respond to constructive criticism. And it's not like Shark Tank where, a founder gets to pitch for 3 minutes and then they get a deal or they get rejected. We're following these companies for months, and you follow them week after week over a 10-week season. So you really become intimately familiar with the founders. Of course, you know about the business and the deal, but I think it's more interesting to really showcase these founders on their journey so the viewer can really become intimate with these people, and that becomes part of their decision making as well, in addition to the financials and all the items in the offering circular.
Well, and you've got to, as an investor, you have to have that emotional connection. There has to be something about what you're investing into that you can relate to, that grabs you, that you want to relate to, and knowing the founder and seeing the passion that they have on a regular basis throughout the episode, that gives you that opportunity for that emotional connection, and that kind of cinches the investor investing.
I think that's right, and yet it's a double-edged sword. And I think when we were talking about this series, and believe me, we've been talking about it for 4.5 years, raising capital to produce the show and putting all the components together. I do think there were a lot of people that thought this was going to be an infomercial, maybe the SEC, maybe FINRA, right? The regulatory bodies that govern capital markets or broker-dealers or exchanges. Hey, we're going to do it. We're going to produce a show where people can buy shares in companies. The gut reaction from a regulator is like, wait a minute, what is this here? And yet we knew that if we produced this show like an infomercial, it wouldn't work. And
right.
And that's not what we wanted to do. So at the end of the day, as a human, as a founder, we're dynamic. We have our talents, we have weaknesses, we have strengths, we have vulnerabilities, we have insecurities, and businesses are just the same, right? Companies can be competitive in one way and have a huge exposed weakness in another. And our vision was to showcase the good, bad, and ugly of these companies, because that's what business is. That's who people are. And so rather than just show the traction and the sales and the growth, we said, well, let's put these founders to the test. Let's put them in a room with a billionaire investor and have them open that door and pitch an investor for the first time. This investor doesn't know who's coming in, what the company is. We want to get that authentic connection, that authentic meeting on film, because that's what I think is most interesting to a viewer. It's not the pitch. That's the 2-minute sizzle video. It's not an infomercial. There's a lot of hype in these, traditional equity crowdfunding campaigns. You go to a platform, you look at a deal and the landing page, and I liken the landing page to a press release. And if you were to make investment decisions off of landing pages or press releases exclusively, that's a sure way to lose money, right? Because you're being told exactly what the company wants you to hear. But I think that, Vicki, to your point about that connection and emotional bond, I think the better way to create that bond is to actually show founders when they're weak, when they get knocked down, because then you want to see, well, what do they do? Do they get back up? Do they get mad? Are they angry? Or did they swallow their pride and say, you know what? She has a point. Maybe I can improve. Maybe I should consider a different approach. That's a way to create trust. And this is, I think, something that's very subtle, but it's really powerful. And, we've raised millions of dollars to produce this show. And so I've pitched my own business to at least 1,000 investors. And I can tell you without hesitation that part of my strategy to build trust with the prospective investor is to be honest with the investor. And sometimes I get questions asked to me, I don't have the answer. I'll say, you know what, that's a great question. I don't have a good answer for you right now. Or when an investor says, who are your competitors? The founder that says, well, we have no competitors. It's usually a bad answer. You always have a competitor. What are the risks of investing? Oh, there's no risk. No. If you say that, the investor's going to walk away because they know there's risk. So having that open dialogue and communication, highlighting the risks as well as the opportunity, as well as the traction, that's how we really create a strong emotional bond because it's authentic.
Exactly. And people tend to think that, if so-and-so did it and he became successful, I can do the same thing. And nobody realized the struggles and the hardships and the difficulties involved in creating a successful business. And when you show those things and you show the founder stumbling along the way, you also have the opportunity to find out whether there's a tenacity or there's a passion or there's a true vision by the way that they overcome or react to those stumbles along the way. And you're exactly right. That's what grabs the investor to know that this is the company he wants to invest in because he's seen the ups and the downs and the success that came afterwards. And that's incredible. Darren, the episodes that I've seen of Going Public, they're fantastic. The founders, Lauren, the moderator, all of the mentors that are in there. I have to tell you, Darren, it's fabulous. It's an excellent production.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, thanks, Vicki.
Really
we appreciate that. And look, I think there's always opportunity for improvement. And as we're watching these episodes, I'm thinking to myself, and we should do this differently, that differently, season 2. But I think overall, we're proud of what we've delivered. And, what we can say is, look, we've invested millions of dollars into the production of this show. And so as far as we're concerned, this is the highest quality content the industry's ever seen. I don't know of any other platform or company that's put millions of dollars into producing the stories of a company raising capital like this. Now, there's individual issuers that have put 10, 20, maybe 50 grand into a video. But, our budget for season 1 came in at just over $2 million.
Wow.
And we have a really, really exceptional production company, I should mention, I&E Entertainment. And this is an advantage for us, right? People think, it's media driven, it's heavy, manual. That's not true. The production value of this show is a distinct competitive advantage because we've been thinking about how to tell the stories of these companies for years. The folks at I&E, Mark Coops and Eric Day, who are the two principals, they've been thinking for years about how to produce this series. We knew it was a unique opportunity because it had never been done, and we wanted to make it both exciting, authentic, but also educational so that somebody watching, if they don't invest, they can learn something. And they can walk away and say, maybe that's what I should do for my business. Or, maybe I should do a celebrity deal like Josh Snow, who sold $100 million of his teeth whitening kit, suggested that this founder do. And, we're proud of the way the series has been produced. We've had a lot of fun with it. And as I mentioned, we've been, producing since April, basically April through November, maybe a little bit into December. And it's all come together now kind of episode by episode. And it's been, that's the fun part of this, right, is the production value. And, the guys at I&E, Mark Coops, he co-created and co-executive produced The Biggest Loser, which is one of the most successful television franchises ever. So no offense to like a bunch of kids in their 20s doing TikTok videos, but we strategically decided to work with people that have been in the business, that have produced thousands of hours of high quality original programming, and the team at I&E has been incredible. And so, we enjoy working with them, and we're really proud to have them as a production partner in this show.
Yeah, and to piggyback on something that Vicki said before, I've seen these your episodes as well, And they are fantastic, but they almost look like, though, that it is an overnight success, that it happened just yesterday. It's so professionally done, and it's good to hear that you tell our viewers that this came to be over years, and it just makes it even better when you talk about, I mean, I'm sure you got rejection along the way from people who maybe didn't like the idea for whatever reason. And in fact, Darren, I remember a while back you posted something on LinkedIn about here are some of the reasons why my deals were rejected. I got a good laugh out of that. So, overcoming rejection is really a key.
Listen, it's incredibly important, for any founder. And I think the average founder has no clue what they're about to go up against when they start a company, or even worse, when they try to raise capital. For us, it was a 4.5-year journey from the day we decided to pursue this vision of democratizing private capital markets, of leveling the playing field for investors around the world. And that was at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in Manhattan in New York. And my co-founder, Todd Goldberg, pitched me the idea. And, my first reaction was actually to shut him down. And he was in the middle of his pitch. And he knew I was, at the, kind of one of several leaders in the industry at that time. And he said, I've got this idea for a show like Shark Tank. And I said, Todd, I've heard this, man. I said, it's a commonly pitched idea. I said, I'll show you 3 or 4 decks. I've seen decks for this same idea. But we realized that the reason the show didn't exist is because the wrong people were trying to pursue it. They didn't have, some core foundational piece to build or complete the puzzle. And, we had these pieces, but it took 4.5 years to put them all together. And, man, when we first went out, we were cold calling our way into Amazon and CBS and Hulu. And of course, we were actually successful in getting meetings, and the initial feedback from these companies was very positive. And then they would say, well, who's your showrunner? And I would look at Todd and he would look at me, and we were thinking, what's a showrunner? And we didn't know. We just had this idea. And then as we were looking at each other like a deer in headlights, the executives at Amazon were like, get out of here. You guys have no clue what you're doing. So we said, okay, we're missing this showrunner. So we brought in a production company. And then it was like, well, now we need a distribution partner. Who's going to put this series on their platform and let us market securities to 20 million monthly unique visitors? And over a year and a half, we negotiated a pretty comprehensive distribution deal with entrepreneur.com. And then from there, it was like, great, we have a production company, we have a distribution partner. How are we going to produce the show? Because Entrepreneur didn't pay us. It wasn't a traditional deal where some network came in and said, we're going to buy your show and here's $500,000 per episode, go make it. We needed the capital to produce. And so we went out and raised millions of dollars over a couple of years. And, I've pitched 1,000 people on this. And I would just pitch people. I'd walk down the street and be like, hey, this guy looks like he's got money. Hey, well, you know what I'm doing? I'm raising money for a show. I told myself if I pitched it enough, at some point it would come to life. And sure enough, it has, but it was a grind. And then we had to bring the companies in and put them through the Reg A, and we needed a host and mentors. And it's, I guess what I would share with anybody listening is, for any entrepreneurs out there, you really have to play the long game. And I think the average founder is playing the short game, maybe because they don't know any better. And so, 2 or 3 people co-found a business and they're like, great, in 3 months, we're going to do this. And 3 months later, we're going to do that. And we're thinking of this like, okay, in the first 3 years, we're going to do this. And 3 years later, we can launch this. And 3 years after that, we can turn this into a global retail, financial services company. And these things take time. And so to build a real business and to create real change, you have to invest years of your time to have a shot, even a small chance of success at doing that. And so that's what it took for us. God bless anybody. If someone wants to compete, you're listening to this episode, and you're like, man, I'm going to go compete with Darren. God bless you. Go get them. Have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll see you 4.5 years later.
So, Darren, I can see your notepad after that meeting. At the top of the thing, it says things to Google after meeting, like showrunner.
Oh yeah, dude, it was funny, man. We didn't what? Also, right?
Yeah, and you talk about Shark Tank too. I watch Shark Tank, but I kind of think it's entertaining. I don't really watch it with the intent of this is actually going to happen, turn into a real business and funding, et cetera. Because I think a better show from Shark Tank would be what would happen to these guys after the show's over and their deal falls apart. That's what I'd like to find out, because apparently that must happen a lot. So, it's a different take on it. But you watch the show sometimes. You look at a product and a pitch and you're saying to yourself, geez, this is ridiculous. Who'd invest in this? And then they come back from the commercial and all 5 sharks are still in. Like, what? Really?
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, look, 9 out of 10 startups fail. And I actually have a different spin on it. My spin is 9 out of 10 people with an idea can't execute. Right. So you put 10 people in a room and you say, what's your idea? You want to start a company. 10 people go around with some business idea. 9 out of 10 can't get it off the ground at all. 1 out of 10. Then you have 100. So now you have 10 of those people and only 1 out of 10 succeed. So really you're talking 1 out of 100, right? Mm-hmm. That can actually execute, and then beyond execution, they succeed. And so, the odds are against you. And you're right. I think on Shark Tank, they have After the Tank, and they come back and they follow up with like the successful companies. Man, they should do like a postmortem on the companies that don't make it, because there's got to be hundreds, right? These are a lot of the Shark Tank businesses. They're idea companies. These are pre-revenue, or in some cases pre-product businesses. Not all of them. I mean, there's a lot of companies that they've got a prototype or some early sales, but they're basically the highest risk, most illiquid assets on the market. And so you don't have to do hard math to know that the vast majority of companies you saw in season 2 don't exist anymore. They went under.
That's right. And you mentioned the key word there is execution. And we just did a podcast on execution last week, and how important it was, how nothing really happens unless you could take things through the process. So that's something that is such a big point that a lot of people kind of like gloss over, but I'm glad you nailed that point, because that is really the key. Successful issuers and crowdfunders execute and can do their deal from start to finish. But, I got a question on these deals now. You mentioned you're watching Going Public on Entrepreneur, and you can click to invest. When you do that actual click to invest, is that going to the website of that person? Where are those documents and an investability located, or is that an issuance thing, or how does that work?
So when a viewer of the Going Public series clicks to invest, it takes them to goingpublic.com. From goingpublic.com, they pick the deal. They then go into that deal's investment portal, and they can begin the subscription process to buy securities on credit card, ACH transfer, wire transfer, or they can even cut a check and mail it in, right? And it gets reconciled when the check is received and it clears. So it's actually a seamless process. And what we did with the video player for this show is there's a button that's blazed into the player in the top right that says click to invest. And on the top left, there's a button that says offering circulars. And that's how the series is made compliant, and that's how we syndicate compliance. When we license this show to other platforms, or we have other groups or partners that say, hey, can we get episodes of the show? We're giving them the code for that player, which has the click to invest button in the player and the offering circulars button on the top left in the player, so that anybody who's watching that show, it is interactive. They can invest while they watch. If they click to invest, they go to Going Public, they pick the deal, they begin the subscription process, or if they want to look at the offering circular, they click that link, and then they look at the offering circular for the companies in the show. And that's, by the way, one of the reasons that this is a streaming series. So if I didn't say it, it is a streaming series. It is streaming on entrepreneur.com, on goingpublic.com. And that means that 100% of the viewers of the show are watching it, watching episodes, consuming content from a phone or tablet or laptop or desktop. And that's what we had always wanted. We wanted it to be real time. We wanted the user experience to be fluid so that if you see a deal, you can buy shares in 2 minutes from the same device you're watching the episode on. That's a different experience than if this show were on TV, at ABC, CNBC. Now you pull out your laptop, pull out your phone. People obviously do that, but it's not seamless. And so by having this show exist as a streaming series, it's both seamless for the investor and compliant, and it meets Reg A rules.
Yeah, that's right. And you know how sometimes when you watch these streaming shows on TV, you know, Jack Reacher or Ozark or whatever it is, you start watching it, and then after you're done with an episode, it says, you know, next episode, and it kind of automatically loads it. And then next thing you know, you're binging an entire series in one, like, you know, a couple of days. When you watch Entrepreneur, it's the same kind of thing. It's like, okay, let's go to the next episode. And like after the 4th episode, I'm like, where's the other 6? Like, why aren't they there yet?
Exactly.
I'm so into this right now. I don't want to not watch this. So come on, Darren, release them all at once.
And the episodes
believe me, we've talked
really
about
good.
it.
The episodes are really, really good. Darren, how do you decide? I'm sure you get a lot of requests from different companies now that they've seen one or any of your episodes. How do you decide who will be good on it and who will not?
It's a great question. We're looking for companies that have a few key characteristics. We're looking for high-growth consumer product companies that are generally doing north of $10 million in annual revenue. So these are existing businesses that are in a scale-up phase versus more of a startup phase, like a Shark Tank phase.
Right.
We are interested in casting diverse founders. So Ming and Amy, who are the founders of Proven Skincare, which they took from 0 to $25 million in about 18 months. They're Chinese immigrants. They came to the U.S. as teenagers and are now incredibly successful and highly pedigreed, but we love their story. We love Amy and Ming as founders and the obstacles they've overcome in their lives, personally and professionally. That's important for us. That's also why we have Lauren Simmons, who was the youngest ever female trader on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange and just second Black female trader in the history of the New York Stock Exchange as our host. And then beyond that, you know, we have a broker-dealer that we're working very closely with on a daily basis to help us vet deals and evaluate deals. And ultimately, you know, retail investors are wanting to earn a return on their investment. And so we have partners that are helping us evaluate the deal from, you know, a quantitative perspective and can look at the deal a little bit differently. So whereas Todd and I are looking at companies from an entertainment lens, we have broker-dealer partners that are looking at the deal from a financial or investment lens. And then, you know, beyond that, I would say we are looking for companies that have an eye towards public markets, meaning companies that at some point over the next 2-3 years have a desire to go public. We think that benefits the viewers of the series that potentially invest, and it benefits us too because we are taking equity stakes in each of the companies that we feature in the show as part of our compensation model and our appearance agreement with each company. So that's another, I guess, factor in the deal. I think we had around 200 companies apply for season 1. We probably shortlisted 30 and went into diligence on, you know, heavy diligence on 15, and we signed 4. And we continue to see applications come in daily on the goingpublic.com site. They click apply, they put in their you know, name and their deck, and we have a team that is actively, you know, looking at deals. And so that's, you know, I think at a high level how we're looking at companies, and we continue to be keen to, review applications from female or underrepresented founders that have historically been locked out of the venture capital realm, that historically do not receive or receive a disproportionately low amount of venture capital. We want to give those types of founders an opportunity in this series, and to highlight them personally and to highlight their companies and make them stars of this show on a go-forward basis. So, it's a couple different things. And then, of course, it helps if the founder's charismatic, and not everyone is, right? I mean, you could run a $1 billion company and be dry as a rock, and you could be a genius or a prodigy and stumble in an interview and get nervous on camera. So in truth, we are looking for founders that have all those attributes and are good on camera and are confident and are charismatic, are entertaining, are funny, are humorous. And if you watch the show, you'll see we do have a couple founders that fit that bill to the T. And they actually steal the show because their personalities are larger than life and they play well in this show. So that's, I would say, the last thing we're looking for in these companies.
Yeah, and your show has so many components to it.
Have they raised any money?
That's a great question. So here are the metrics I can share with you to date. We launched episode 1 on January 18th. And so episode 4 was released on Tuesday. We're releasing episodes every week, every Tuesday, and we'll do that for the coming weeks until we hit 10 episodes. Through the first 3 episodes, we had 18 million total ad impressions, 5.2 million views across the first 3 episodes. 146,000 people visited goingpublic.com. 37,000 people have visited the investment pages across these 4 deals, because there's 4 companies in season 1, and the companies to date have collectively raised $10 million. Now that $10 million includes, thank you, it's a mix of retail and institutional capital. And so what's happened here is that some of the companies in the show are maybe more savvy than others. They're actively exploiting their involvement in this series with strategic institutional investors. They're having viewing parties at their homes, inviting billionaires, funds, asset managers over. Hey, come take a look at us in episode 1 of Going Public. We're a star in this new series. Here's a clip. Here's a piece in Forbes. Here was me and my co-founder. We're interviewing on Entrepreneur or Benzinga, a live stream. So some companies are admittedly playing a better hand of poker than others, but that is not to say that the other companies aren't catching on. So 10 million to date across retail and institutions, and I think my sense of what's going to happen here is that the season concludes in late March, and some of the companies in season 1 may be terminating their offerings for their Reg A's at the end of March. Assuming that is the case, we will announce that in the coming episodes, and I think you're going to see a lot of activity in these deals as we conclude the series, because that's typically what happens in an offering where a company says, hey, we're terminating the offering on March 30th. We're 5 weeks out. Now we're 4 weeks out. Now we're 2 weeks out. That's one way for companies to drive urgency. The catch is if they announce a termination date, they will terminate. There's no they can't extend it. So if they announce it, they have to terminate the offering. But that does drive investments in deals and has historically been
absolutely
a smart tactic. Yeah. So I think you're going to see some of that here as we wind down the series and as we move into the second half of the season in the next few weeks.
Yeah, Darren, those are really impressive numbers, no doubt. I do have one more question for you before we close out this podcast. And, your show encompasses so many different ideas and categories. Like when you go on Twitter, something's always trending under, let's say, business, or trending under entertainment, or trending under politics, whatever that is. If you were the programmer at Twitter, what would Going Public trend under? What category do you think?
Man, that's a good question. I would say entertainment, right? At the end of the day, Going Public is a show. and it is an original series. It's streaming now on Entrepreneur and on our own site. It's an entertainment property. It is a show that happens to, have a tie into capital markets and online investing. But it's a show, and we're proud of that. And it's that's where we would hope to see it trending. And, my goal, Ron, has been the question I've been asking myself for 6 years is how do we make equity crowdfunding mainstream? And the answer that I came up with ultimately was through a TV series. And why not? Because TV shows have become cultural zeitgeist. They are watched daily by tens of millions of Americans, and they're burned into the minds and the psyche of those people, me included, you too, and Vicky.
Sure.
I don't know, maybe it's Euphoria, maybe it's Book of Boba Fett, maybe it's something else, but we all have an Apple TV, or we've cut the cord, or we have Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus or Amazon. And that was our strategy. Our strategy was to create a show that became mainstream so that equity crowdfunding could be made mainstream with it. Our host, Lauren Simmons, was recently on Good Morning America. Yesterday, she was on Fox News with Charles Payne. She is going to be on some really big mainstream talk shows in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I can't say the names because they're confidential and haven't been announced.
Yeah.
But, we have been blessed to be on the receiving end of a lot of PR for this series because it is unique, and we've got some interesting companies and an amazing host.
Yeah, and you're on the Mappable USA podcast as well. So how about that? See?
Thank you. We love that.
But Darren, how do people contact you or get more information, or if they have any questions on all this? What should they do?
Well, if you have a question, look, I love being available, Ron, to your audience. You guys have been great to me. If anybody wants to follow me, I'm on Twitter at Darren Marble or LinkedIn. My email is Darren, DARREN, @goingpublic.com. I'm happy to field any questions about the series, applications, people that want to be in the show, anything. I'm available, Ron, to your audience, and Vicky, your audience too, of course. And then if they're interested in learning about the show, they can go to goingpublic.com.
Okay, that's great. And Vicky, I have to say, we know a lot of people in the crowdfunding world, but I think that Darren has to be probably one of the top influencers in the entire industry. I mean, he's proven it. He's consistent, and I love having him on the podcast. I think, Darren, if we could do a podcast with you every week, that would be great. What do you think, Vicky?
That's an excellent idea. Maybe it depends on how well we do at the crap table.
Yeah,
there you go. I'm betting on hard eight. I'm a sucker. I mean, and I swear I'm not a big gambler, but I do like craps when I'm in Vegas, and I love the hard ways bets. And I know those are horrible bets. I know that the people in the pit running the table, they roll their eyes when people make the hard ways bets because they're like idiots. But I love those bets. I love hitting the hard eight, and hopefully, Vicky, we're going to make some money together.
Yeah. It's like crowdfunding, Darren. If you invest in a deal and you make money, it's a great decision. If you invest and you don't make money, it's a bad decision. Just like craps. If you win, it's good. If you lose, it's a bad thing.
There you go.
So.
I would say one last thing, Ron. Darren he's created an exceptional production in going public. And even though he had a lot of difficulties, he didn't give up. And that validates the exceptional quality that is Darren Marble. And I got to say, that's why we like you, Darren. That's why, because you're exceptional. And we love exceptional. And kudos to you to have created such a fabulous thing in going public.
Oh, thanks, Vicky. I really appreciate you saying that. If I were at that craps table, I'd give you a big hug. It means a lot to me, and it's a lonely journey. But you guys have been great. You've been just tremendously accommodating. You've given me a platform for years, and I really appreciate the relationship I have with both of you for all the great work you do. I know I'm one of many guests you have on regularly, educating an industry and investors and companies alike. So continue to do what you do, and together we can accomplish our goals and hopefully make some money on that hard eight all at the same time.
There you
totally
go.
Agreed.
I love
totally
it.
Agreed. All right, Darren. Thanks so much again for being a guest on the show. Vicki, thanks for co-hosting this episode. It was great. So much information, and always looking forward to the next going public episode. Folks, you're listening to the Mappable USA podcast on mappableusa.com. Just go to that website, scroll down, you'll see all our syndication sources. Pick the one you like best, subscribe, and never miss another one of our episodes. If you want to be a guest on the show like Darren was today, fill out the guest form there. We'll see what we can do about get you on the show. And if you like what you heard today, which I'm sure you did, send us an email at info@mappablusa.com, or just leave a message on wherever you're listening to this on right now. So thanks for listening. Thanks for your support. We'll be at you next time with another Mappable USA podcast. Have a great week, everyone.